Hello and welcome. I'm your host, Neil Howard. Thank you so much for joining us for another segment of Health Professional Radio. We'll be speaking with Dr. Erica Gunderson in this segment, Senior Research Scientist at Kaiser Permanente Northern California Division of Research and a Professor of Health Systems Science at Kaiser Permanente Bernard J. Tyson School of Medicine. She's joining us here on Health Professional Radio to discuss being named the recipient of the 2022-23 March of Dimes Agnes Higgins Award in Maternal-Fetal Nutrition. Welcome to Health Professional Radio. Dr. Erica Gunderson, thank you so much for your time this evening.
Thank you so much for the invitation. It's such an honor to receive the Agnes Higgins Award for my research and my public health clinical work as well.
Well, tell us about that work. You must have accomplished some great things winning this prestigious award.
Well, I feel so honored to have received the award because I actually, when I did my graduate work at UC Berkeley, I learned about Agnes Higgins and her Montreal diet dispensary work and just the paving the way for good nutrition for pregnant women and vulnerable young children. So it's such, her legacy was well known to me for decades, and I feel like I followed in her footsteps. Because after I did my master's work in nutritional sciences and public health, I actually served in public health settings for at least 15 years and worked for the WIC program, the Women, Infants, and Children's Nutrition Program, that really was established because of her groundbreaking work in highlighting the importance of additional protein and nutrition during pregnancy.
How drastically have the guidelines for pregnancy nutrition changed in the last 2 decades?
Well, we've been doing many studies on pregnancy and gestational weight gain. That's one of the many areas that I research. I'm an epidemiologist, so I actually changed careers a couple of decades ago and went into full-time research with a PhD in epidemiology. And the gestational weight gain is part of the recommendations to make sure it's a marker of how well women are doing nutritionally. Of course, we like to get more details on that by doing nutrition assessment. But what I can say about changes in care is that the preconception period was underappreciated a couple decades ago, and now that has become the emphasis for preparing women, not only nutritionally for the best pregnancy that they can possibly have, but to avoid complications. We try to do very complete cardiometabolic assessment in the prenatal care setting before pregnancy begins so that we can control any chronic medical conditions such as hypertension that really increase risk of maternal morbidity or mortality, which is very crucial to address before pregnancy happens.
When you're talking about preconception period, are we talking dietary regimen throughout life or simply before you plan on becoming pregnant, say 6 months, 2 years, something like that?
Yes, certainly. I mean, we want women to be in the best health possible. So if they have blood lipids or blood glucose levels, or they have blood pressure that's too high, we want to treat that. And a lot of that can be treated with lifestyle practices and behavioral changes and managing the best healthy weight that they can attain. So much of that is preparation for pregnancy, is eating well, eating better, getting extra excess fats out of the diet, but as well as getting more fruits and vegetables and, avoiding certain substances that we know can cause problems for women. And the other really important recommendation is that women have been recommended to take folic acid supplements so that they can avoid some deficiencies and the extra needs that they would want to go into pregnancy. optimally supplied with iron and these B vitamins that help the baby grow and develop very well.
It's almost a minefield trying to navigate some of the labels and some of the deceptive advertising when it comes to eating nutritionally. I would think that that is even more so when advertising and products are targeted towards expectant mothers. Are we talking foods that are more healthy for the mother, or foods that are specifically designed for the health of the baby while the mother is pregnant, or a combination of the two?
I think there are universal principles of diet that people can carry throughout their lifespan. It's just making sure that women are getting certain prenatal vitamin supplements. We always recommend having them take those before pregnancy because there are significant demands on the vitamins and minerals, and particularly iron as well. So it's really using whole foods, as and less processed foods, and avoiding high refined sugar. Just an overall recommendation for a healthy diet that you would have your entire life, I think, is with certain special emphasis that we like to educate women about when they come in for orientation. And there are lots of health plans, health care systems that actually, and Kaiser Permanente, where I work in the Division of Research, we have excellent resources online that women can read about what the needs are and the recommendations are, preparing for pregnancy, preconceptually as well as during pregnancy.
Are there any cultural barriers when it comes to eating properly for conception and for pregnancy, nutrition versus culture?
I think when I practiced in the WIC program and practiced in my public health part of my career, we always tried to translate those healthy foods and the types of foods and the nutrient-rich foods into cultural patterns. And that's one of the major programs that I worked for before I went into my research in lactation, breastfeeding, and managing diabetes and pregnancy was the California State Sweet Success Program, where women with diabetes have to receive special care before conception to have their blood glucose be in the best control possible. And those are women with type 2 diabetes or type 1 diabetes. And our approach was to give them a team approach of all types of specialty care, including a registered dietitian nutrition who would help them balance their medication with the amount and types of foods. And in those settings, we did a lot of work in translating into cultural preferences. And that's the ideal, is to make sure women are able to see who have these special medical conditions need to receive care from nutritionists and dietitians that can translate the food patterns into their cultural preferences. And I think you raise a really important point, that this is crucial for women to be able to incorporate their cultural diet patterns. And we have professionals that are excellent at being able to guide women in that regard.
In what ways do you think that these topics, some of these topics that we've been discussing, need to be further studied, and maybe one of your main goals or aspirations within your career in the next, decade or so?
Well, I think we need to look at a few arenas. Beyond the preconception arena, there is the prenatal care during pregnancy. And a lot of the groundbreaking work that I'm doing right now has to do with looking at blood pressure patterns in the first half of pregnancy and trying to predict or stratify which women are actually at higher risk of developing preeclampsia or hypertensive disorders that are very much the leading cause of maternal morbidity and mortality. So we're making inroads with those types of studies and have some really good demonstration research underway to try to predict that early so we can develop and provide interventions to folks that are at highest risk, as well as give them additional monitoring. And the second part of my research that's been ongoing for more than a decade is to look at the impact of breastfeeding or lactation on milk production as recovery from the demands of pregnancy that women undergo, and how that breastfeeding a child can actually benefit the mother's health long term. And we've shown in studies that there's about a 50% relative risk reduction in development of type 2 diabetes after pregnancy. And we also think that breastfeeding a child may benefit the mother long term in terms of decreasing her risk of heart disease, and that's the leading cause of death in this country in women and men. So we're really making inroads to lifestyle behaviors that are specific to the prenatal period and the postpartum period. And I think some policy decisions that have been recently made to help improve long-term health and postpartum health in women are the funding of prenatal care up to a year post-delivery, as well as programs that are considering greater support in education for breastfeeding in the delivery and postpartum period. So it's a very exciting time to see some of the research that we've been accomplishing actually applied and translated into clinical care and longer paid maternity leave for women. I think it's critical because that will help them recover from the demands that pregnancy imposes on them physiologically, psychologically, and emotionally in this important recovery period. So I'm very excited for the research ahead in these arenas.
Well, thank you, Doctor. I appreciate your time. I'm hoping that you'll come back and give us some more updates and talk more about your work and your research.
It's my pleasure. Thank you so much.
Thank you. You've been listening to Health Professional Radio. I'm your host, Neil Howard, in conversation with Dr. Erica Gunderson. Audio copies of this program are available at healthprofessionalradio.com.au, also at Anchor, Spotify, and be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel at youtube.com/Health Professional Radio.